Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I am most grateful to Bursa Malaysia for inviting me, and very grateful to all of you for being around. Very grateful to all my fellow presenters. I am very grateful to the chairman of Bursa Malaysia, sir, for being here today. You normally don't come on a second day. You are all here on the first day, but you have come here and graced the occasion. Thank you very much. I am also very grateful to the very dynamic director of Bursa Malaysia, Mohammed Salim, who we see at most conferences. He manages to attend conferences without having to present a paper. But he's really Mr. Dynamism. And I also want to pay a compliment to the two people from the organizing side who have been the same since 1997 when I started speaking at this forum. And that is my friend Alan O'Yong. Alan, put up your hand. And his very faithful colleague Selina. I don't think Selina is here. Upstairs, yeah. So, these people who organize the conference, they are the real people on whom we rely for everything happening with clockwork efficiency. And clockwork efficiency is the name of POC 2025. It's the finest conference for commodities anywhere in the world. This time, for the first time in all the years that I have spoken, I actually gave a title to my presentation. Normally my presentation has a very boring title, Price Outlook 2022, or Price Outlook, or Palm Oil Price Outlook. But this year, it was so important to give it a title. And the title is Address to Indonesia. Is it time to lift the Indonesian moratorium? Believe you me, I think it is time. We have a very large GAPKI delegation here. They organize a wonderful congress every year in Bali, which I have the privilege to speak. And I would urge the GAPKI leadership who are here today, please carry this message back to your country and to your very distinguished president. The moratorium must be lifted. If the poor, needy 3 to 4 billion consumers of vegetable oil in the developing world are to be spared high prices. That is the message. We meet today under rather challenging times, and a lot of my thunder was stolen by an excellent presentation by Emily French, who I realize shares the same political bent as me. We meet today under a Trump presidency. Price forecasting has again become extremely difficult because every morning you have to change your outlook depending upon the tweets of the previous night. And we have, in my opinion, the 3 T's: Trump, trade wars, and tariffs. And every day we have to recalculate how things are going to be impacted. Last year at this POC, most of the speakers were a bit bearish, and I happen to disagree with them, and I am very pleased that markets by and large were quite strong. I said, and I quote, "Palm bulls will soon have their chance." You know what? Between March 24 and now, palm bulls had not 1, not 2, but 3 chances. The biggest bull run we saw was in November, December, on the back of lower palm production, which everybody has talked about, and the excitement in Indonesia on B40. One of the ways in which you can track Indonesian production, and I let you into a little secret, read the quarterly results of the palm oil companies, Indonesian companies who are listed in Singapore. Singapore's listing regulations are very strict. So by and large, the companies have to honestly report. In other countries, the regulations are not so strict, so they manage to bluff. Read the quarterly reports of the listed companies in Singapore, and you will see always a paragraph on palm oil production. And if you read the quarterly reports that came out for the third quarter ending December, they were all down by 10%. Very clear. Sadly, sometimes the reports come out a bit late. But what they all say unanimously is that in the following quarter, production is picking up. And that is the clearest, most honest signal to the market that the period of downward production in Indonesia is over. The period of recovery has already begun. One unusual aspect of 2024. From being the cheapest and most competitive vegetable oil, palm rose to become a premium product, a premium priced veg oil. And the credit for this exalted status for palm oil, and I don't believe this is a permanent change, it looks like more of a temporary change. The reason for this exalted status was the newly elected Indonesian President Prabowo, and the lower than expected production. The consequences of B40 are manifold. To my mind, the one strongest reason for the Indonesian president to push for B40 is to reduce the dependence of palm oil on the European market. The Europeans have bullied the palm oil producers for far too long. It was time that the palm producers decided to create a big domestic market which was not at the mercy of various interests. And that was the one driving force that President Prabowo has pushed for B40, and probably he will even take it to B50. Palm is now much more affected by the energy market, and that is why palm production needs to be stepped up. The move to B50 and similar larger mandates in other countries will tighten palm supplies unless we do something about that supply. To my mind, 2024 was a year of replenishing stocks, and you could see in the very good presentations made prior to me that stocks were very low and have been gradually building up during the course of 2024. In addition to palm, all other oil seeds, with the exception of sunflower, expanded their production. And as we enter 2025, world stocks of oil seeds and veg oils appear to have been rebuilt. There is no longer the sword of Damocles hanging over the market that stocks are too low, production is too little, and there is likely to be an upsurge in prices. That is all in the past. I want to say a few more words about the plea to the Indonesian government. Malaysia can't do much, there's no land. But Indonesia has the land, and the palm oil industry, thanks to organizations like RSPO and also most of the constructive NGOs, they have forced the industry to clean up its act and take over what is called sustainable palm oil. So now the time has come for Indonesia to lift the moratorium and legislate for palm plantations to be expanded sustainably. And only Indonesia can take the lead, and I believe they have the right leader in President Prabowo, who has so far put his money where his mouth is and is likely to do so and should be encouraged to do so. And Malaysia, Indonesia have a joint council for palm oil. It is important that both of you sit together. I am sure countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the whole of Africa who need palm oil will join you. And we have this moratorium lifted, but lifted for sustainable plantations. If we do that, I believe there is a vast amount of prosperity for our people in terms of living standards, in terms of nutrition, in terms of wealth creation. World production of palm oil is stagnating, and I'm not saying anything new. World demand for palm oil, for biofuel, as well as for food, is expanding each year by between 2 and 3 million tons. The West, and I mean Europe, may be in denial, but they cannot do without palm oil. As they may not call it palm oil, they may call it waste oil, but they need it. And incidentally, all of you in this hall, who are all old-timers in this industry, did a single European entity, NGO, government, unofficial, did any of them complain about the fraud that was UCO and waste oil? No. It was commercially viable, so they kept on accepting it. It was Indonesia and this president who stopped the scam of waste oil. And congratulations to Indonesia for doing that. The West has got very high standards of morality. So high that they completely forgot about waste oil and UCO. And even now they would accept it. It was Indonesia who stopped it. Remember that and never stop repeating that. On the question of the moratorium, I will repeat again what I said earlier, that 3 to 4 billion consumers in the developing world, and I include China in that, we need to keep away from very high prices for food and for nutrition as well as for energy. And the easiest way to do it is sustainable farming, sustainable plantations, and the moratorium should be lifted. I hope very much and I pray that by the time the GAPKI conference comes up in November, we will have good news, and the Indonesian government, with the encouragement of India, Malaysia, Pakistan, all the countries who need palm oil, will be able to take the first step, because lifting the moratorium alone will not do. It will still take 4 or 5 years for the palm oil to be produced. So it is a matter of urgency for us to do that. Now, having given you a little political lecture, let us also concentrate on the market, which is why I am here. The unique feature of the last 12 months has been the extent to which palm lost demand. And soya and sun stepped in to replace palm. There were also 2 big political developments: the election of President Prabowo and later the election of President Trump. And there was yet one other very significant development which I have to highlight. And there is a large Indian delegation here from my association, the Solvent Extractors, from Teflas, who are the organizers of the Globe Oil Conference. India hiked the import duty by 22%. But guess what? Normally when India hikes the import duty, the effect is felt partly at origin and only partly in India. So prices go down, if duties go up by 20%, prices fall by 4 to 5% at origin, sometimes as much as 10%. And the balance 10 or 12% is covered by the rise in the local market in India. But this time, something completely different happened. The origin market in Malaysia and Indonesia did not blink. Prices in fact rose, they did not go down. And the entire rise of 22% was borne by the Indian consumer. This is something very significant, and a lesson which the Indian government should learn. Whether they learn or not, we don't know. But it is a lesson that in a tight market, if you raise the import duty, whether for good reasons or bad, your consumers will pay, your country will pay in the form of higher inflation. Where are we now in early 2025? Relatively comfortable stocks and supplies from April, as most of my distinguished speakers have said. We have relatively high prices which are not conducive to demand expansion. Ask any of my colleagues from India here and they'll tell you the consumer market is in a rut. It's either stagnant or slightly depressed. Prices are too high. In Indonesia, we have a strong and triumphant President Prabowo. The B40 program is finally finding its feet. And there's one more reason why I want to congratulate the President of Indonesia and the Indonesian government. You have made a very bold move to remove the subsidy on non-PSO biodiesel. Give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. This is politically a courageous move, but they have done it very cleverly. If you read the newsletter, the very fine newsletter that Dr. Julian McGill publishes under the name of Glenelg, he has from day one, and I think thanks to prodding from Hui Chen Liao, very succinctly explained why those who are producing biodiesel will not be able to pay the penalty and avoid producing biodiesel. The Byzantine world of diesel in Indonesia is full of checks and balances. If you avoid making biodiesel on the one hand, if you avoid blending, you get caught on something else where the penalty is so severe that you are put out of business. And Indonesia is a very tough country in that respect. So, believe you me, B40 will happen, and at the same time, they have at one stroke of the pen, with great political courage, removed the subsidy on 55% of their biodiesel. So now there is no question of raising the percentage of the export levy, and the program becomes 50% more self-financing. From a subsidy of almost $400, they'll be able to bring it down to about $200, and gradually it will come down further. And this is a very, very constructive step in the right direction taken by the government of Indonesia, and they deserve kudos from all of us. I have an observation about Mr. Tariffs, who has taken office, but somehow he's a little circumspect. You realize that when he announced in a big way tariffs on Canada and Mexico, who blinked? Canada and Mexico did not blink. They announced reciprocal tariffs. The president blinked and postponed the imposition of tariffs by 2 months. That playbook of bullying your neighbors, bullying your counterparties is now so well known that it has become a little less effective. Now the president is looking for quick wins. Greenland, Gulf of Mexico, Canada. It's not working, but it's worth a try. And the media keep publishing about it, and it diverts attention of the people. My question is, and my fear is, and very well articulated by Emily French in her wonderful paper, which I agree with 100%. Will President Trump end up killing the US biodiesel goose and hurt the very farmers who elected him? The American farmer is a very wonderful, interesting person. I had the privilege of meeting American farmers every second year in the conference that Dr. James Fry used to organize at LMC. And the first year Trump was elected, I was making fun of Trump with the American soybean farmers who were present over breakfast. Guess what? the next 3 days, I had to have my breakfast alone. American farmers root for President Trump. The point is, farm incomes in the US were the highest under Obama and under Biden. Farm incomes fell under Trump version 1. And you can see, and Emily was so succinct in pointing out, farm incomes are going to fall under Trump version 2. And yet the red states, the farm states, vote for President Trump. Something unusual I cannot understand. Maybe psychologists in future years will explain that phenomenon. Now I come to what you really want to listen, the outlook for palm in 2025. Palm production is expected to be better, we all know. Indonesia, in my opinion, will be higher by at least 2 million tons, if not more. Supplies will look plentiful because of the elimination by Indonesia of fraud relating to waste oils and UCO. And palm is going to have to fight to gain market share. Palm stocks and supplies remain tight until the end of March, until the Ramadan festival, holidays, fasting is over. Palm will have some problems and the market will remain tight. And the funds who are very strong in the market may not want to let go until the end of March. Be careful. But vegetable oil consumers in all the developing world escaped what we feared would be very high prices in the December-March period. A, because of the teething problems of B40 in Indonesia and the election of President Trump in the United States. I have to say, the Trump shadow over veg oils and grains will be a long, dark shadow. No escaping that. Let us look at canola rapeseed. Canola and rape seeds are under threat of US tariffs, mainly the Canadian produced product. Canola oil has already lost all its biodiesel subsidies. That was not due to Trump, that was due to Biden. Biden was also interested in supporting US farmers, and under the new protocol, imported canola oil has lost all biodiesel credits. So rape oil could be one of the cheaper oils in this year and may be imported into India because sun oil has now become very expensive. And the way it will work is canola seed will be exported to Dubai, and the Dubai crusher, who is here in the audience with us today with a big smile on his face, is going to be very happy because he will be shipping rape oil to India and rapeseed to the Middle East. Indian rapeseed production in 2025, I am afraid, is going to be lower than 2024. But we go into the new season with ample stocks, so there's no problem on supply. Let's look at soybeans. Massive crop in Brazil and an okay crop in the rest of South America. Soya oil has one new demand, in fact so much new demand that the Argentine crushers who sold March shipment forward are having to buy back, and that is why the basis is so strong at the moment. But other than that, soya will now have a problem having one new markets to hold on to them. As was pointed out, meal is a burden. But at the same time, shorting meal has always proved to be problematic in the Chicago Board of Trade. Because I am afraid the meal market is in very strong hands of 5 giant US crushers. And when people have shorted the meal market, they have usually paid for it in blood. One has to be careful. Be careful before you short the meal market. And thankfully, Soybeans, like corn, are such a hardy product that their production keeps expanding and farmers love these products. They are so good, and no matter rain, shine, drought, frost, they manage to give you some yield or the other. So that production will keep on expanding. We have already seen that the Brazilian biodiesel mandate has been tempered. Instead of going to B15, they are going to stay at B14 by the need to control prices. US soya oil, its use in US biofuels will expand because Chinese UCO out, Canadian canola oil out, all that has got to be replaced, and it's mainly US soybean oil which will replace them. So in a shrinking market, the market share of US produced soya oil will increase, and the US has already contracted to export very, very handsome quantities of soya oil, mainly to India. So my surmise is that the basis you have to pay to get cash delivery in South America will go lower so as to keep soya oil competitive. Futures may go up, but the basis will go down. If the futures go down and the basis remains stagnant, that will be catastrophic for the market. But you cannot rule that out. Because if beans are under pressure, meal is under pressure, and bean oil also comes under pressure, that is a dangerous situation. It's a difficult situation. It is not an impossible situation, but it is one which will trouble the market a lot. Futures, bean oil futures going up and the basis crashing. And we have seen basis has gone to minus 1,000, minus 1,200 in the past. So that is possible. And I think that is the scenario we are likely to see if the futures keep rising for technical reasons. On sunseed, the significance was that 2024 crops were much lower than 2023. If, and there is a big if there is some kind of a ceasefire or peace in the Ukraine, definitely the planting of sunseed will be much higher than last year. Even otherwise, there will be a recovery in planting of sunseeds. Next, the question, will President Trump ask Ukraine to hand over half her sunseed crop? He seems to be wanting half of everything. And finally, I think sun oil is going to become the premium oil once again in the price structure of oils. A quick word on China. China is returning to higher growth, but its veg oil consumption is likely to be flat. And Ryan Chen's paper amply illustrated that. China is likely to be preoccupied with trade and tariff matters in 2025. China may retaliate against US beans in case of a standoff on tariffs. So overall, China is not a bullish factor in the market for 2025. India imports will be higher in 2025 compared to 24. You have all heard rumors in the last couple of days that India is again likely to hike the import duty on veg oils. Hiking import duty is an easy option, and I am afraid governments tend to take the easy option. India should undertake more serious options of increasing her oilseed yields by using GMCs, incentivizing the crush, encouraging the export of meal. But these are difficult things, difficult to do, they need application. So governments tend to take the easy option of just tinkering with import duties. We'll have to wait and see how the Indian government actually reacts. But I'm afraid if they raise import duties on veg oils again, it will lead to inflation, disastrous inflation in the domestic economy. Now these are the figures of my estimates of India's imports for next year. But look at column number 2, which is the imports of 12-13. 13 years down the road, The palm share, the palm volume has remained stagnant. 8 million in 12-13, 7.7 million in 24-25. But look what has happened to soya oil and sun oil. Soya has gone fivefold. I think soya will hit 5 million tons this year of imports. Sun has gone up threefold, from 1 million to 3 million. We may have to bring it down a little bit if prices keep rising. And there is a very interesting fact, others. Others, I expect small imports of rapeseed oil, but unfortunately, substantial imports of what I call pirate oil. Pirate oil is oil which is shipped to Nepal, and then under the SAFTA regulation comes duty-free into India. The Nepalese stir the oil with a little bit here and there, do a little painting, etc. on the tankers, and they say, oh, value added in Nepal. Here comes the oil, duty-free into India. This is actually a bit of a scam. The Indian government knows it, we have represented to the government, but the government says, look, Nepal is a small country, they are our friends. If they benefit a little bit, if they become prosperous, no problem. If Nepal is prosperous, they will buy more goods from India. So this is a little concession to Nepal, which sometimes is misused, but it's a fact of life. And if India raises the import duty again, the Nepalese transshippers will make even more money, and this figure may even go higher up. So this is something we have to bear in mind. Now we come to the macro analysis. World energy demand rises every year by about 3 million tons. I was very interested to see some of the previous speakers say, oh, there is going to be no increase in energy demand next year. And I will not be surprised, because the one confirmed increase in demand is B40 in Indonesia. But Trump may reduce demand in the USA, we don't know. Brazil looks like it will be stagnant. So I am being very cautious in saying world energy demand will go up by 2 million tons, but I am hesitant to reduce it further. But it may be down to 1 million or stagnant. We really don't know until President Trump and the EPA and others come in. There are so many ways they can wreck biodiesel. There is a provision called small refinery waivers, which give waivers to refiners from blending biodiesel. There are 87 applications pending before the EPA, some asking for retrospective waivers going back 4 years. It can destroy the whole economy of biodiesel if they go along with that. So we have to be careful. World food demand increases by 3 million tons every year. For next year, I have put in again 2 million tons because prices are high and the world economy is not going to grow as much as we think it's likely to be. So net effect, last year demand went up by 6 million tons. This year I expect demand to go up by 4 million tons. And now look at this. This is my matrix of incremental supply and incremental demand. Incremental supply goes up this year mainly on account of soybean oil, 4 million tons, extra crushing mainly in South America. Rapeseed oil comes down by 1 million tons because of the smaller rapeseed crop. Palm oil goes up by 2.5 million tons, more or less agreed between us. And sun oil went down by at least 2 million tons between Russia and Ukraine. So, the net result is that incremental supply goes up by 3.5 million, incremental demand goes up by 4 million, more or less static. But, in my opinion, most of the additional demand is already there. In fact, there is going to be even more demand destruction. And the supply, particularly the palm supply, is yet to come, post-April. So the effect on prices will be of heavier supply and relatively thin demand in terms of growth. Price outlook factors, in my opinion, are Trump's measures like tariffs, sanctions, trade war, the outlook for energy prices, one has to be bearish on energy prices for this year. North American weather, the trajectory of the dollar, that is the one factor which may be mitigating on the bullish side, because as you saw, the Trump regime talks of a very strong dollar but ends up with a weak dollar. And that weak dollar usually leads to higher commodity prices. One must bear that in mind. Most of the shrinkage in supply is now, but the expansion in supply is going to come post-April. My price outlook is that I expect palm oil futures on the BMD third month to trade between 4,000 and 4,600 between now and 31st March. This is still a bullish period. The leanest production month, the lowest stocks, and disruption thanks to Ramzan. These three factors will keep the market hot. After Ramzan, I expect a significant pickup in palm production and a slide in palm prices, which will eventually make palm once again more competitive. So between April and November, I expect the BMD to trade between 3,600 and 4,100. But more on the lower side than on the higher side. Planting and growing weather in North America will take center stage from May onwards. And soya oil futures, I believe, will recover due to the very complicated and political incentives for biodiesel, which various lobbies will try and wrangle out of President Trump. Remember, he's got to do something about the farm states. He can't neglect them completely. So we may see that soya oil futures on a local perspective do rise. But the basis in South America will compensate by going down and making soya oil attractive. Sun oil prices will remain at a premium. And all this can and will be affected by the actions of President Trump in terms of a trade war and tariffs. Lauric oils are much more politically neutral. Coconut oil should remain stable between 1800 and 2000 CIF Rotterdam. Palm kernel oil will be cheaper than CNO, but this vast amount of oleochemical capacity which is coming on stream during the second half of next year may make lauric oils tight and give a boost to prices. It will hit the profitability of the oleochemicals industry, and that may be translated into higher raw material prices. Because I don't think they will be able to pass on those high prices in view of the large capacity which is coming on stream. So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest factor is going to be tariffs and a trade war. Supplies look comfortable, and Mr. Trump is not a supporter of biofuels. Edible oil consumers and FMCG users can look forward to some comfort in 2025, because I do believe that their processing margins, their manufacturing margins will come back on the back of lower raw material prices. So with those words, good luck and God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Dorab Mistry.